2 Maccabee, chapter 1. To our Jewish brothers in Jerusalem and Judea, and to our Jewish brothers in Egypt, peace and grace be with you. May God do you good and remember his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, his faithful servants. May he give you all a heart to obey his commands with a whole heart and a willing mind. May he open your minds and hearts to listen to his laws and commands. May he hear your prayers in times of trouble and not abandon you, whom he has favored. Behold, we are praying for you here. We have written to you about the sufferings and hardships we suffered at that time, as Jews, when Shumason and his companions were exiled from the royal place during the reign of Demetrius in the 169th year to the Holy Land. Ison came and burnt all doors. Innocent blood was shed in plenty. We cried out to God for refuge, and he heard our voice. We offered offerings and fine flour and lit our lamps. We offered bread of the presence. You must also celebrate Feast of Tabernacles in Conjunctim, December, January. In the 188th year in Jerusalem and in Judea, together with the elders of Judea and Judas, writing to Aristobulos the teacher of Ptolemy the king and a man of the family of anointed priests, and to the Jews in Egypt, well-being and peace be unto you. We give great thanks to God, who has stood for us and saved us in all the troubles that have befallen us. When the king came to fight against the holy city, he drove him to Persia. When he and his army went thither, he, who was thought to be invincible, was killed in the temple of Noni. The priests of Noni had tricked them into making them prisoners, and he was going to stay there with Antiochus and his friends. He had taken a large sum of money as dowry. The priests of Noni had made a promise of compliance, and when he entered the temple fort with a few people, they opened the door, and through a small space they entered, and he was stoned to death. They cut off his head and threw it to those who stood outside. Blessed is our God, who has destroyed all the wicked. We are preparing to celebrate the 25th of the month, the Feast of Tabernacles, which was given to us when Nehemiah built the temple and the altar and offered sacrifices. When our ancestors were taken to Persia, the pious priests of that time took some of the fire from the altar and hid it in a waterless cistern and covered it so that no one would know where it was. After several years, by God's favor, king of Persia sent Nehemiah and the descendants of the priests who had hid down the fire. When Nehemiah sent them to bring fire, he said, but there was no fire there, only water stirred up. Nehemiah ordered some of that water to be brought, and after they had made offerings and sacrifices, he instructed the priests to sprinkle that water on the wood and the sacrificial objects. They took some time to do this. At sunrise, while sky was covered with clouds, everyone was surprised when the fire was lit, and the priests remained in prayer until the service was over. When the priests, Jonathan, and the others left, they said, it was because of Nehemiah's prayer that the fire was set ablaze. He prayed thus, Almighty God, creator of all things, awesome and mighty, just and merciful, the only king, the only judge, the only protector, the just and sovereign, the one who saves Israel from all troubles, who chose our fathers and sanctified them. For all your people Israel, whose your own people, accept this offering. Safeguard and sanctify your inheritance and portion. Gather us together, we who are scattered. Set free those who are in bondage among the unclean and forbidden nations, O Lord. Let your eyes dwell upon us. Let the nations know that there you are our God. Let those who are arrogant and oppressive, who are oppressing us, be afflicted. As Moses had said, grant your people steadfastness in your holy place. The priests stood singing songs of praise and offering sacrifices and offerings. When Nehemiah had finished, he ordered that the remaining water be stored in a place surrounded by special stones. When they did so, the fire on the altar continued to burn until the glazing fire died down. When the Persians heard that boiling water had been found in the place where the exiles had kept the fire, and that Nehemiah and his companions had used it to purify the offerings and sacrifices, the king built a temple in that place. And the king, having inquired about the matter, gave them good precious gifts. They gave them to others who accepted them. The temple of Nehemiah was called Gunpather, which means purification, and many call it Naphtali. Chapter 2. In the book of the prophet Jeremiah, we read, after this, he instructed that the fire be taken and kept. He advised that the people should not forget the commandments of God and turn away when they see the idols made of gold and silver and their adornments. He also gave the law and many other similar things. He also insisted that the law should not fade away from their hearts. It is also thus written in that book. The appointed tabernacle, as instructed by the prophet, went with him and came to the mountain where Moses had previously climbed, where he found the Lord's place of inheritance. There he found a cave temple and entered it and kept the tabernacle, the ark, the altar of incense, and the door to it was shut secure. Some of those who had gone with him later searched for the way and the place where he had gone, but they could not find it. Jeremiah, knowing it, rebuked them, saying, "The place will not be known until the time when God himself gathers the people together and has mercy on them. Then God will reveal it to them. Then the glory of God, as it had appeared on Moses, will appear." And Solomon, when he prayed for the sanctification of the sanctuary and offered sacrifices and offerings with his wisdom, he dedicated and established the temple. Moses had said that the sin offerings had been consumed, for they should not be eaten. Solomon also performed the same for 8 days. It is written in the books of the records. Nehemiah collected the records of the kings, the prophets, and David, and the letters of the kings concerning the sacrifices and the offerings. Likewise, Judah also collected the records that were scattered among our people because of the wars that had taken place, and we still have them. Send men and take any of them that you need and take them with you. We are preparing to fulfill the sanctification, so we have written to you that you also do the same. God has saved his people in all things and has given them an inheritance to all, and has given them the kingdom, the priesthood, and the holiness promised by the law. He will have mercy on you soon. We also put our hope in him that he will gather us from all over the world to the holy place. He has saved us from many troubles and cleansed this place. About Judah Maccabee and his brothers, about the purification and dedication of the great and glorious temple, about the wars fought against Antiochus Epiphanes and his son Avuthor, and about the apparitions that appeared from heaven to those who fought for the Jews with vigor, is recorded. It is also written that although they were few in number, they drove out impure and obscene nations that came against them. Thus the temple and the holy place, famous throughout the world, became in peace and comfort, and the city was liberated from the slavery of the Gentiles. They collected the laws that was about to perish and arranged them according to the will of the Lord and the mercy that had been bestowed upon them. All that happened was written in 5 books by Quirinite Eisen. Although it was very difficult to write it down in sections by writers, we took extreme interest to do so, examining the history of all that happened. And although it was difficult to incorporate so many things and was difficult to write down many things repeatedly, we felt inspired to write them down section-wise and preserve them, in order that the souls of those who read them may be instructed in truth, that it may become easy for those who want to hold fast to its words with interest, and that it may be of great benefit to those who read them with resplendence. We have set in order. We have written in parts because we were interested in these things. This work was not easy for us, but we have done this work with great effort and long vigilance. It is not an easy task, like trying to please others with a feast. However, we are taking on this difficult task to satisfy many people. Leaving the fine details to the historian, we will briefly state that when a new building is built, the skilled builder looks after its overall form, while those who embellish it think only of its adornment works. I think that this is the same with us. It is the duty of the historian to write down everything in detail and do it with perfection. The one who rewrites is allowed to write briefly in his writing and to omit detailed explanations. So without further ado, let's begin our narrative briefly. Before we begin the big story, we're just stating a brief narrative. Chapter 3. The holy city was living in peace and quiet. The law was well observed because of the virtue of Huniah, the high priest and a hater of evil. Kings came with honor and with great and noble gifts to honor the temple and the country. Even King Seleucus of Asia gave from his own wealth everything that was needed for the execution of the offerings. Simon, of tribe Benjamin and appointed administrator, rose up against the priest. When he could not prevail against the high priest, Huniah, he went to Tharsios of Apollonios, the governor of Syria and Phoenicia at that time. He informed him of the treasures in the temple and said to him, "The wealth in the treasury is so great that it's beyond estimation. It is not just to concede all this money as sacrifices and offerings. Let them all be in the king's power. When he received information about the repository and wealth, Apollonios informed the king of the repository and the wealth. The king called Halidoros, the steward, and ordered him to seize the repository and the wealth in it about which he received information and bring it to him. He immediately set out to the cities in Syria and Phoenicia and came to carry out the king's command as quickly as possible. Halidoros arrived at Jerusalem. The high priest and all the city received him with honor, and he revealed to the king that he had been sent for the matter in which the king had received information. The high priest inquired if all that was really so. He told him that it was for orphans and widows, and that some of it belonged to the son of Tobiah, a rich and noble man, and about which wicked Simon had scandalized was nothing, and that all of it came to be merely 400 pieces of silver. They are not illegitimate. It is impossible for those who believe in the sanctity of the place and its great name in the whole world to steal it. But because of the command of the king, Halidoros told them that all these things are to be confiscated and deposited in the palace. A day was set when they can enter there for all this to be seen and be exchanged. There was great consternation in the city. The priests, dressed in priestly robes, fell to the ground and cried out to the lawgiver to grant complete security to that gift of wealth. The hearts of all who saw the high priest were strengthened. The fall of his countenance and the change in his appearance made clear his mental agony. His gracious gestures and elegance departed from him. Thus his mental agony came to be clearly evident. People came out of their houses in flocks. They prayed that the temple wouldn't be let down by disgrace and scorn. Although virgins were not allowed to leave their homes, few of them ran to the courtyard. A few among them ran to the forts as well. Others were looking out through the windows. All of them turned down their hands and cried out to the heavenly God. This affliction and suffering of the people, the anguish of the high priest and his heart's torment, were a pitiable sight. For whose sake had all that treasure been entrusted? Unto them should it be carefully guarded. So they cried out to Almighty God. Halidoros, on the other hand, was determined to do immediately whatever he had come for. As soon as he and his armed men began to enter the treasury, God, the Lord of spirits, the Almighty, and the Omnipotent, made a wonderful and glorious appearance there. So all who dared to enter there were overcome by the terrible miracle of God that appeared to them. For they saw a man, splendid to behold, of elegant attire, riding a fearsome horse, and coming with great fury. The sound of his clashing weapons frightened Halidoros. He was seen riding in a carriage armed with golden weapons. At the same time, two young men, resplendent in appearance, of great strength, and of wonderful attire, were bashing Halidoros fiercely with whips from either side. He, who was in great darkness, suddenly fell to the ground and was carried outside. A short while ago, he, who had entered the house of repository with great pride and strength, fell down helplessly, unable to help himself. Thus the power of God was openly manifested. He was overcome with lack of hope and despair of life by the work of the true God. The people praised God for bringing glory to his place. The temple, which had been filled with fear and terror a short time before, was now filled with joy and gladness, for God's work and splendor was shown. Immediately some of Halidoros's friends approached Hunia, pleading with him to beseech God that they be given life, as they were dying without hope. Reckoning perhaps king will be led into believing that the Jews had wronged pertaining to Halidoros, hence he offered sacrifices for the man's life. While the high priest stood and gave him atonement, two young men appeared to Halidoros who had appeared before and said to him, "Thank the high priest, Hunia, for whose sake God gave you life. You, the one struck by God, proclaim his glory and great power to everyone you go to." After saying this, they were no longer seen. Halidoros offered sacrifices to God. He prayed at length to the one who had given him life. He also paid homage to Hunia exceedingly. So he returned with his own army to the king's presence and testified to everyone about the power and works of the mighty God who had appeared before his eyes. The king inquired Halidoros about his matters and wanted to send him a second time to Jerusalem. Even if he were alive, he would return beaten and humiliated. But there is truly the power of God in that place. The God of heaven is the authority and protector of that place. Halidoros said that the god would torment and destroy those who harm that place. This is the information pertaining to Halidoros and protection of repository. Chapter 4. The wicked Simon, whom we mentioned before, who had betrayed the city and the sacred repository, scandalized Hunia again. He said that Hunia was the real perpetrator of everything that happened to Halidoros, and that he was the cause of all suffering that befell him. He dared to say that he, who had done so many good things for the city, fought for his people, and was zealous for the law, was the cause of all these evils. Thus his hostility increased, and at the instigation of Simon many murders were committed there. This evil jealousy was understood by Hunia. Apollonius, the governor of Syria and Phoenicia, was aiding and abetting all these evils of Simon. This was known to the king. Hunia, however, was all concerned about how salvation be brought to his people. Hunia realized that there was no other way to bring peace except by the mercy of God, that without God nothing would be made good, and that without help from heaven Simon would not cease from his wickedness and his cruelty. After the death of King Seleucus, Antiochus, whose name was Epiphanes, became king. The brother of the high priest Hunia, Iason, deceived the king and obtained the power of high price. He promised the king that he would give him 360 silver and other property of worth 80 talents. He also promised to build a gymnasium in Jerusalem according to the Greek style and an arena for wrestling, and to name the Jerusalem citizens as Antiochian citizens, and if the king would allow it, he would give him another 150 talents. The king agreed, and he took the high priesthood and power through deceit. At that time, he turned all his people to pagan worship, and he abolished all that had been decreed for the Jews by the mercy of God, and that had been arranged through John, the father of Aplamos, who had gone as an ambassador to the Romans for peace, and he made all the works of the true law of God to cease. In place of all these, he established evil customs and practices. He built a city below the city wall, and quickly established a temple. He subdued the powerful. In the same way, he showed great interest in poetic forms, Greek profanities, and the filth of the heathen. He was not a high priest, but a tyrant. Sacrilege became so powerful, so much so as to even deprive the priests of their service at the altar and their desire to offer sacrifices. They even mocked the temple and its service, and enjoyed watching violent battles and wrestling matches. They had disgraced the dignity of the service of the fathers and desired the vain glory of poetic works. Therefore, misfortune overtook them, and in whose actions they had collaborated and desired to be like them, those became verily their enemies, and were punished. It had become clear each time that it is neither good nor desirable to violate the holy law. The king went there to see the games that was performed in Sor every 5 years. And the heinous and vile Iason sent some of the Antiochians as spectators from Jerusalem. He also sent them 3,300 pieces of silver for the sacrifices to be performed there to Hercules. Those who took this money implored that it be not used for the sacrificial service, because it was not fair. They decided to use it for other purposes. So the money that was sent for the sacrifice of Hercules, those who went there requested that it be used for some other service, as they had decided. When Menastius' son Apollonius was sent to King Ptolemy of Egypt, Antiochus was concerned about his own safety, thinking that he was a stranger in the affairs of his kingdom. He went to Joppa for many things. From there, he went to Jerusalem as well. He was received with triumph by Iason and the people of the city. Then he went to Phoenicia. After 3 years, the wicked Simon's brother Menelaus was sent by Iason with gifts that he had promised to give to the king. He was sent to tell him about the special things they needed. When he got there, he honored himself before the king's presence and demanded the position of high priest. He was exalted above Iason. He also was given 300 pieces of silver. Though he received the king's edict, he did nothing worthy of the office of high priest, but he walked about full of anger and rage. He harbored wicked thoughts in his wicked heart. Thus Iason, who betrayed his brother, was made subject to another one's deception. He fled to the land of Ammon. Menelaus took power. He didn't have money to pay what he had promised to the king. So Thrithos, who was appointed as the governor of the fort, urged him to pay. He was authorized to receive money, so both were summoned to the king's presence. Menelaus appointed his brother Lysimachos as the chief priest. Svetritos gave the task to Carthasai, the commander of the army of Cyprus. Meanwhile, The people of Talsi and Malhuthides were also rebelling against the king of Antioch because Antioch had been given a gift to king's concubine. When the king learned about this, he came to calm them down. He appointed Antinichrus, who was in charge of essential matters, in his stead. When Menelaus saw that he had an opportunity, he stole and gave some of the gold utensils of the temple to Antinichrus and sold the rest in Tyre and the surrounding cities. When he learned the truth of this, Hunia rebuked him and went to Daphne, near Antioch. Menelaus, however, secretly approached Antinichrus and requested him to assassinate Hunia. He approached Hunia and spoke peaceably with deceit. He begged him to come out of the holy place, giving him his right hand, and swore. Although he had doubts, he killed him as soon as he came out. He had no qualms about killing that saint. Therefore, not only the Jews mocked and reviled him, but even many of the Gentiles reviled him for having treacherously killed that man. When the king came from the Cilician region, the Jews from all the cities opposed him because of the treachery in the murder of Hunia. Even the Gentiles, because they were in great pain because of the unjust killing of the Jews, helped them. When King Antiochus heard this, he was deeply moved and wept bitterly, for he was deeply grieved over the death of that righteous, pious, humble, gentle, and kind man. Antiochus was furious and ordered to take off Antinichrus's clothes, tear them, and walk him around the city, and to kill that wicked man where he had killed Hunia. God avenged him with the punishment he truly deserved. The inhabitants of Jerusalem, who agreed with Menelaus's opinion against Lysimachus, gathered in the city and demanded restoration of the immense gold he had stolen. As the news spread also outside, a large crowd gathered against Lysimachus. When Lysimachus saw that the crowd was turning out into a mob, he recruited about 3,000 people armed, handed them over to the lawless, and killed them. A man of depravity and profanity entered the scene to be his accomplice and,
"All glory be to the Holy Trinity, one God!"
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.